ADA 30 Idaho, celebrating the Americans with Disabilities Act.
We are talking today with Chris Volmer, the Community Preparedness Coordinator for the Idaho Office of Emergency Management. Hi, Chris. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm well, Jamie. Thank you for having me today.
Sure. We just wanted to talk with you a little bit about emergency preparedness, and since you are the go-to guy, we figured you'd be the perfect person. So,
Well, I'm happy to help. So my name is Chris Volmer. I am the Community Preparedness Coordinator and Mass Care Coordinator for the Idaho Office of Emergency Management. So we lead the state in planning, preparing, responding, and recovering to natural and man-made disasters, including the current COVID-19 pandemic.
Awesome. Thank you. You've kind of got a full-time plus job going on right now. Job security. Okay, so I've just got a few questions for you. We'll keep this short and sweet, but we really want to get the information. So what are some of the things that you've learned with working with people with disabilities, and how's it changed your work?
So prior to taking this position with the Idaho Office of Emergency Management, I worked for the American Red Cross as a disaster program manager and had the opportunity to go to lots of big, major, very destructive disasters, including Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico and the Camp Fire in California. And that experience, plus what I've experienced here at the state, is that many emergency managers, myself included, and first responders just don't understand or recognize things that could be prevent independence for the disability community. Very difficult to identify those issues. If you don't live with a disability, it's really hard to recognize some of those things that could cause or impede the independence of folks that do. For example, I remember in California, we brought in a disability integration coordinator to one of the shelters that we had opened. And I saw her over at one of the doors, and she was opening and closing the door several times. And I was curious, so I went and talked to her, and she brought it up to our attention that the pressure that it required to open that door was potentially so heavy that somebody that was in a wheelchair or relying on a walker or some type of mobility device, that they would have a very tough time opening that access point. And it really opened my eyes and others in the room, other emergency managers in the room, opened our eyes to some of the things that we just don't consider, which I think the number one takeaway from that was the importance of being inclusive in the emergency planning and preparedness process, and having representation from the disabled community at the table to help us recognize, some of those issues that we just take for granted, that we wouldn't see, we wouldn't recognize because we don't live under those constraints or have those challenges that somebody with a disability does.
That's true. A lot of times, if it's not something that you deal with every day, you just you don't know. So what are some of the suggestions that you have for individuals with disabilities to prepare for an emergency?
We scream this mantra all the time at the state level, at the federal level, FEMA. Get a kit, make a plan, stay informed. Those are the very basic tenets of individual and household and family and organizational preparedness. So when we talk about getting a kit, obviously there's special considerations for folks that live with a disability, including items that help a person maintain their independence, communication devices for folks that are deaf or hard of hearing, mobility devices for folks that have a difficulty getting around, medication, right? So during a disaster, any type of disaster, never assume that medication will be easily available or easily replaced. So we definitely recommend that folks that take medication have as a stockpile of that, have some ready to go that they can take with them, because it could be several days or, like we saw in Puerto Rico, several weeks before some of that medication is available. Insulin was a very huge issue in Puerto Rico with the power outages. Folks had a very tough time preserving their insulin and keeping that cold. So part of the humanitarian relief efforts there was actually delivering ice to insulin-dependent individuals so that they could keep that insulin on hand and have it. So a lot of considerations, especially special considerations for that medication. When we talk about making a plan for the disabled community, consider the barriers to evacuation, right? What if the power goes out? What if the elevator doesn't work? What if there's an earthquake and the wheelchair ramp, becomes inaccessible or unusable? What if the route that I traditionally use to get to the bus stop or to my friend's house is disabled? So take a look and develop alternate plans or contingency plans for how you would get out of your home, how you would evacuate, how you would get to a safe location. Another part of making a plan is developing a network. Okay, so knowing folks in your community that you can call and check in with, family members, friends, coworkers, somebody that you can check in with and let them know that you are okay or that you do need assistance. We like to have to recommend people have a contact in the community, somebody close, a friend, family member, whatever, and then also somebody outside of the community that can be reached via cell phone or regular phone call. The reason being, in the event of a disaster, everyone's trying to make a phone call, and it's overloading the cell towers in the local area. So if you're able to make a long distance call and reach out to somebody outside of your community in a different city or a different state even, that cell signal is more likely to get out because it's reaching out to multiple towers instead of just that one tower in the immediate area that's being inundated with phone calls. Knowing where to go if an evacuation order is issued, that comes to staying informed. If you don't have friends or family or coworkers you can go stay with, downloading those emergency apps, having a battery powered radio that's not dependent on electricity, monitoring local news and the state and county social media accounts during a disaster to know where those emergency shelters will be or where those evacuation points are that folks can go to and get resources and get information as to what's happening and where they should go next. Part of that, I would also highly encourage anybody with a disability that finds themselves in a congregate shelter to be vocal and express if there are barriers to you maintaining your independence to the staff at that shelter. And whether it's, we partner a lot with the American Red Cross to operate shelters in times of disaster, and just making known to those staff that this is an issue that is preventing me from being independent. And I promise you that through the Red Cross or through one of the county or state partners, that it's something that we take very seriously, that inclusion is extremely important to all of us, and that we will do everything in our power to help you overcome that barrier to make it not an issue anymore. So, I would highly encourage folks that in the disability community that want to be advocates for the community to get in touch with your local emergency planning committee, the emergency manager in the county or parish or town that you live in, and talk to them and let them know that you have insight that they don't, and that you can be an asset to the planning and preparedness activities in your hometown.
Awesome, thank you. I like having, when you said to have the multiple plans, that you now need plans B through Z. So
exactly, yeah. One plan's not going to do it anymore. If 2020 has taught us anything, you need plans for everything, apparently. So who'd have thought we were going to have a pandemic and
right.
and multiple large-scale earthquakes make landfall in the United States, followed by a very destructive wildfire season. It's make a plan for locusts and everything else as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time today to talk about this. It's super important information, and we appreciate your time.
Jamie, it is my absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
A word collage in the shape of the United States with the word access highlighted and hashtag thanks to the ADA.